This is Melissa Ford-Luckin.
Rosalie Petrowski.
Susan, Seraph, and Jess.
Editors for the Washington Square Review.
Washington Square On Air
Showcases the poetry and fiction
of the latest edition of LCC's literary journal,
the Washington Square Review,
read by the poets,
authors,
and editors themselves.
Expect the unexpected
as our contributors express
experience and fantasy with humor,
imagination,
poetic license,
irony,
and passion.
If you love language
at its most original,
please join us in our audio town square
to celebrate a community of writers
spanning from around the world
to Lansing.
Hey there, this is Melissa Ford-Luckin, editor of the Washington Square Review. I'm here today with one of my students from my Writing the Novel class, Rick Bilodeau. So, hey, Rick, tell us a little bit about how you came to LCC and how you registered for the class.
Well, I had heard about the Michigan Reconnect program, and
tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you have to be 25 years old or older and never have had a associate's or a bachelor's degree. And that pretty much qualifies you. I'm surprised that more people aren't taking advantage of it.
It's a great program.
It is. And I'm a vet, and I never used my GI Bill. I used one semester, and at that time I was married. I got a job in a different city. We had to move, so I never went back. And I always wanted to go to college. I have 5 children. They're all have bachelors. 2 of them have their masters. So I was like on the bottom of the totem pole. And so I took advantage of the Michigan Reconnect. And I was torn between photography and writing. And I was told that I would have to buy my own camera for photography. And I'm on Social Security. I couldn't afford to pay.
Well, I'm glad you're in the writing.
Yeah, well, I am too. I think I have been writing for several years, spiritual poetry. I've self-published 6 books and 1 children's book.
Is that one poetry as well?
No. It's a regular story about a I don't know how to say this. I was trying to find a character that I could base a story on. And I was sitting in my kitchen drinking a cup of coffee one morning, and I seen a stuffed dog on top of my microwave. And it clicked. This can be the guy. And so I made him the center of the story from when he was created at the toy factory, shipped to a grocery store, a store, and bought there by a customer, and then the story of him being at home, and he had friends, and it was kind of cool.
It sounds fun. What's his name?
Drake.
Okay.
And I had never written a short story. This was 16 chapters, so it's not really a short story, but to get everything together, I was probably writing by the seat of my pants.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
And as far as this class, this is my 4th or 5th writing class. I've had composition 1 and 2, intro to literature, another class, and then this class. And I had never written anything with so much dialogue, which is a whole different animal. But I think I'm doing okay. I'm ahead of my schedule. So
That's good. Talk a little bit about the writing classes that you took before. What were those like?
My Comp 1.
And did you take it during COVID or did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we were, it was an online, and I really didn't like it.
Was it one with the online lecture?
Yes.
Okay.
And
And what didn't you like about that?
the togetherness, it just seemed, you miss the professor's animation and feelings when you're not right there absorbing.
Right. And the other students as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it was okay.
It was what it was.
Yep. So if I can not do it, I'd rather have a face-to-face.
And what kind of writing did you do in that class?
Mostly poems.
Okay.
And I took I took my English comp class was with Professor Lauer.
Okay.
Yeah. And she was great. And what I did a lot in that class, we would read poems and I would write poems about the poem. So, and I even used, AI for one of the poems. I wanted to see what it would do. So I asked for a 7-stanza poem about forgiveness, and it spit it out in less than a minute. And I took that poem and I rewrote it in my voice, and it was well received. So I think AI could be a tool that you could use, but it's very clean and
Talk more about that. What do you mean?
Like antiseptic.
Okay. All right.
And
Cold? Unemotional?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's not a person.
Yeah, right. And so I can see people, students using it, and I'm sure they are. But I think if I use it, it would be as a tool, just like I did for that class. And it was just to show the other students that you could use it. And I presented both, one right after another, and it was well received. So.
And then, so I'm wondering, how did it feel to write poetry in a class context when you'd been writing it on your own prior?
Well, in the process of learning about poetry, about meter and rhythm, and I always did write in rhythm, but I didn't know why, and I didn't know there was other forms of poetry, and
so it must have been exciting.
It was very eye-opening, and I think it gives me some kind of, I don't know if vindication is the right word.
Validation?
Validation would be, after this, I can hold my head up high and say, hey, I've accomplished something. And it was hard at first. I almost didn't stick around.
What made it hard?
The protocol for college. I mean, just registering for classes. I didn't know when you were on a wait list, you had to check every day. And I almost didn't register because I was so frustrated. And
what made it frustrating? Having to check every day, or just the complications of the process?
The complications. And so I met with an advisor, and they've helped me figure it out. And it was good.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to sort out. You know, there's prereqs and placement tests, and
and that I had. At first I took the reading and the writing, and I scored high enough to where I could register. The math, that was a disaster. I've been out of school over 50 years, and I never took algebra, trigonometry, geometry, calculus. I never took any of those advanced math classes. And the first page of the math test had numerous questions of algebra, and it went right over my head. So I had to take a prerequisite to the prerequisite. So I took those one semester. I took both of those, and ended up passing with a C. It didn't.
Passing's passing.
Yeah, it didn't demolish my GPA too much, so I'm still hanging in there.
So how many semesters have you been here?
5.
Okay. What is most surprising about your experience so far?
The amount of help that's offered.
Oh, nice.
I mean, from printing out papers, and the tutors have been sensational. They were really good.
Was that for math or writing?
Yeah, math.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't really did anything for writing. Maybe because it comes easy to me. So if somebody was coming here, you would say there's lots of help. Look for the resources. Yes, definitely.
That's great.
Yeah.
Did you do writing on your own before in your earlier years?
No.
Never?
Never.
Did you even think of it?
No. and that it's so weird because I've always, even back in high school, been able to string words together almost instantaneously. And I never knew why. And I'm a religious person. I really, really think this was God's plan for me all along. And so writing is the thing. I'm going to have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. When you were in school a few years ago, did you enjoy reading in English classes? What kind of classes did you like?
I enjoyed history.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
And reading. But writing, I never...
Just didn't...
Never clicked until several years ago.
So what happened several years ago?
Well, I was a youth leader in a youth program through my church, and the director told us to write a letter to 2 of the students. So I wrote a poem called Just One Drop. And
how did you decide to write a poem? Just came to you.
It just came to me. And when I started writing it, it just clicked. And so I wrote that poem, and then I wrote a couple hundred poems, and I was too embarrassed to show them to anybody. I wrote them on my phone, and
it must have felt great.
It did, and I sent a few to my pastor, and he cornered me after church one day, and he goes, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" No, no. He said, "You should pray on it," and I said, "Well, I will." And so I did, and I wrote a book, and I sent it to a publishing company, and they rejected it. And so I said, well, maybe I can do this myself. And so I self-published. And my first book that I wrote on my phone, I made the mistake of the first 2 or 3 books putting pictures in, and to size and resize, and my phone was so, the screen was so touchy that it would knock paragraphs out and put them in wrong order.
Oh, wow. Formatting nightmare.
Formatting. And I had to rewrite it 42 times.
Oh, no.
And I gained a lot of patience from that. And then eventually, and I think the reason why I put pictures, I think I was afraid of my work standing on its own. And I don't worry about that anymore. So it was pretty eye-opening.
How long did that take to get it formatted?
Oh, a couple months.
It's a complicated process. You must have learned a lot.
I did. In fact, in my early comp class, I did a essay on that, on
neat.
doing writing self-publishing a book. So I knew it well.
I'm sure you do. Do people ask you questions now about self-publishing?
Some. Some. I've had offers to from people at church to write with them. And I mean, right now I'm too busy. But
yeah, that's a very different process.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially as you're describing it, the poetry just came up from inside you, and it's really personal, I would think.
Yeah.
You know.
In fact, I wrote 2 poems after the Michigan State mass shooting, and I do believe I sent at least one to the land writing contest.
It's an annual competition we have here at LCC.
Yes. And that poem that I read about Anne Bradstreet, that was the first poem that I had ever written that was not spiritual in any sense of the word. And I entered that into land, and I didn't win anything, but it was still a pretty cool process.
It is a cool process because it gives you an opportunity to focus on one of your pieces in particular and send it off to have other people read it, which feels really different than just writing it like you said.
Right.
In the beginning, you wrote it and you kept it
excuse me,
really privately, and then you start to share it with other people, and then other people with poetry, they bring their own meaning to it, and so it starts to become something different. Separate from you.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about the project you're working on for the Writing the Novel class.
Oh, I love it. Well, it started off as a story about a murder in a small town called Pleasant Grove, Michigan. And I started thinking, okay, I'm going to have 6 characters. And after I started writing a little bit, that grew to 10 characters. And then I decided to make it about a soldier who ends up being a priest in this little town, and he helps solve a murder mystery. And so I had to have background on him. He, as a soldier, his dad was a soldier, a Green Beret, a war-decorated hero.
That's that love of history.
Yeah, and Tim wanted to follow in his dad's footsteps. And so he enlisted right out of high school and went through basic training, was sent to Alabama, and from there, his platoon squadron ended up in Iraq. And he was befriended by a chaplain. And the chaplain would go out with them on their missions. And they went out on a night mission one night, and they were attacked by Iraqi nationals. And the truck that Tim was near hit a landmine, and it blew up the front of the truck, landed on him. He had a lacerated thigh muscle and was pretty much knocked cuckoo. Well, the chaplain crawled over to him, dug him out with his helmet, and carried him to a building that was like off the road a little bit. And he got shot a couple times, and he told Tim that he was safe. He could hear the choppers coming and to go make a difference in the world. And so the rest, probably chapters 3 and 4, deals with him in the hospital and then getting out, and he has to have a knee replacement, which couldn't happen until his leg healed from the laceration, and he feels guilty that the chaplain is dead. And I introduced a new character, a Bishop O'Reilly, who is the uncle to the chaplain. And so he's leading Tim down a path towards becoming a priest, the path that the chaplain was going to do. So he didn't die in vain. But the end of the story, I've changed who commits the murder. I had introduced a couple hitchhiker, excuse me, but the murderer was this girl's best friend, and she has a double identity. And the priest, Father Tim, he cannot use her testimony from the confessional because of his confessional oath. So he's really strung over the barrel there. He doesn't know which way to go. And eventually she murders again and they catch her. So he doesn't have to make that decision. And then the book ends with him at Arlington National Cemetery, putting a brown satchel and a necklace that was given to him by the chaplain on his gravesite. And that's how the book ends.
It sounds like there could be another book after that one.
It could.
Yeah, it's definitely serious material.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the research that you did while you were working on the characters.
Oh, wow. I did a lot of research on even simple things like cell phones. Back in the early 1980s, there was, I'm trying to think of the name of it now. But there were some cell phones, and the bishop gave him one in the hospital, which irked his father, and they had a big fight over it and blah, blah. Anyways, so I'm pretty much out of the Army now, that part of the story, and I really didn't have to do. I researched Iraq and some of the cities and the close proximity to Iran and things like that. And
you interviewed someone, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I interviewed my son, who is a Catholic priest, and I ran the idea by him about the confessional, and he said, "You can't use that, Dad." He goes, "Any priest, they would be discommunicated from the Catholic Church, so they would not do that."
So it sets up a great conflict.
Yeah. Yes. So. That was invaluable. He gave me information about the seminary, which I haven't yet written into the story. I'm debating whether to have him, the priest, go to, our seminarian, go to overseas, to Rome or some other countries, which my son did. So there's some invaluable information there that I can use.
The research is a fun part of working on a novel.
Yeah. You really, one of the things that I've really learned is you really have to know the setting, the people, the whys and wheres of daily life, which is why one of my classes next semester is going to be cultural anthropology. So I think that will help.
That sounds great.
Give me a better understanding of people and why they do the things they do, the climates they live in, and that kind of stuff. So I'm looking forward to that as a tool.
Yeah.
So
it is interesting when you're working on a novel how it becomes a real world inside your head.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have some friends.
Yeah.
Here,
That's why I was saying you have to do a series, because when you get to the end, you'll be like, well, I just got to know everyone.
Yeah. Well, one of his best friends is the person that gets killed by this young girl. And that's just up in my head right now. I haven't written anything, but I can see it. And the switching back and forth between personalities of the girl, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be very different from the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
So it'll give it a nice scope. The reader will get to go on a journey, and experience these different things.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed the chapters that I've read so far. So
okay.
Yeah. How are you going to keep working on it after class ends? What's your plan?
Well, I plan on writing during Christmas break, then continuing it next semester with you. And then what I don't finish there, just keep working on it. I'm not sure what English classes, writing classes are left for me to take. but
There's always writer groups as well.
right.
That can offer support.
Okay.
And it sounds like your son's encouraging. So
Yeah.
that's great.
Yes.
That's very cool.
So,
If people would like to stay in touch with you or check out your poetry books, where can they find you online?
well, they can go to Amazon, or they can go to my website, which is The Works of a Simple Man. That's all one sentence. .weebly.com, and that will take them to my website. And then they have to. There's a little toolbox up in the left-hand corner, or a drop box, and they just click on that, and I think there's 4 items in there. My books, it says books, song or music. I've written several songs, and a place where they can make comments, and then some pictures. So they can, if they click on the books, all 5 of my poetry books will drop down, and if they click on it, it will take them right to Amazon.
Okay.
And they can order it if they want, or read a section of it. And I did put chapter 1 of my novel, which is A Wing and a Prayer, and that is underneath all the book titles.
Cool.
So
I have one last question for you. If someone is listening and they're thinking about taking classes here at LCC in writing or anything else, what would you say to them?
I would say do it. The three of my professors were just top notch in writing. So yes, I would say it's worth it for them to come to LCC and get into the English classes, the writing classes, definitely.
Great. Thank you. And thanks for coming and joining me today.
Well, you're very welcome. I had fun.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to our talented poets and authors.
Until next time, this has been Washington Square on Air,
where we showcase selections from Lansing Community College's literary journal,
The Washington Square Review,
a publication featuring writers from the Great Lakes State
across the nation,
and around the world.
To find out more about the Washington Square Review,
visit lcc.edu/WSR.
We hope you enjoyed listening.
as much as we enjoyed sharing.